Hello everyone. My name is Mohit Upadhyay. I'm a technology partner and a principal solution architect working with Tech Mahindra. First of all, I would like to thank Tenerife Summer Sessions for giving me the opportunity to discuss about the topic of the day. Today, we will be talking about an applied AI utilization for federal permitting in the historical district areas. AI can play a significant role when it comes to secure certain permits by providing relevant evidences and identifying the right type of the information in order to accelerate or smoothen the entire federal permitting process. Let's first talk about the compliance challenge. Federal permitting for historical district is amongst the most document intensive regulatory workflows where the project require analyzing lots of information, and that information could be in the form of technical documentations, the map of the areas where the construction has to be done, the photographs of photographic proofs of that areas, engineering drawings, environmental records, and regulatory guidance across the multiple agencies. For example, National Environment Policy Act is using the information of FCC and some of the federal guided authorities, which basically helps identifying the right set of the artifacts in order to decide whether the project which is going to be held at the premises are going to be compliant or no. Now, the challenge is not only just understanding the regulation. The major challenge is about gathering the right set of a data, comparing it, and documenting those evidences at a scale so that it can be rightly used to produce the right permitting letters. Moving on, it's important to understand that why historical districts are different. The projects which are happening in the historical properties, they trigger the careful federal reviews, which is balancing the infrastructure development with the long term preservation objectives and the goals. There are cultural resources, uh, it requires the archaeological and the architectural significance that requires to be assessed properly. Then there are visual characters like height and whatever the mass of the project, whether the aesthetics have been evaluated against the right historical context or no. And when it comes to the multi agency coordination, reviews spans across the environmental impacts, the preservation of the properties, and the permitting bodies, how their rules and regulations comes into a play. Uh, so let's understand further that what sort of the key compliance questions comes into a play when you are preparing for securing a permit for any sort of a construction. Any agency, whether it's a utility company or whether it is telecom agencies or whether any of the agency of the interest which are requiring to construct anything in the historical areas. The first and foremost question is the protected area. Is the project located inside a protected or a historical boundaries or no? The second question comes in, if the construction happens, whether it's going to affect the historical structure and the archaeological resources or no. The third question comes into a play, does a proposed height and a design alter any sort of a visual characteristics of the historical property? The fourth question comes in, like there has to be a streamlined review done. Does the project qualify or is additional consultation required in order to do that particular construction? These questions are very much important in order to do the further analysis. Now, when it comes to the standard traditional workflow based systems, these activities requires a lot of manual or human intensive work. There are certain regulatory specialists would be dedicated to do such activities. They will integrate the information from many independent systems and each requiring a manual effort to reconcile. For example, engineering plans. XYZ premises are having a construction done. What is the engineering plan of that particular area? How does the GIS layers seen in that particular space? Are there any survey reports available which talks about any sort of a construction limitations into this? When it comes to the visual analysis, there are aerial imageries collected and the elevation profiles are also very important. Then the permit application which has been done in the past has seen any sort of a cross communication or agency correspondences, they would also require to be analyzed. Also, if there are any environmental assessments and the utility records available, they would also would like to be analyzed and seen. So, in nutshell, like no single data set provides all the required information which is needed in order to create the right permitting application. And these methods are reliable, but they are very time consuming and very difficult to scale. So, let's talk about how building an AI driven regulatory assistant can be helpful and can reduce significantly this effort, which are highly dependent upon the human to collect any sort of a data reconciliation. An effective permitting solution combines multiple AI technologies and each performing a specialized role within a coordinated architecture. The first and foremost are the large language models. Every federal agency has certain regulations are there and they are periodically revised. There are new rules coming up based upon the projects going on in the periphery. So the large language models help interpret those regulations and summarize the documentation and generate a certain structure reports which can guide the the further AI technology to go ahead and take a right decision. Then there is a second piece of a technology comes into a play where you can use certain computer vision agent object identification utilities which basically can analyze the overall photographic images and then can identify the right set of the information of the available objects and the objects which can impact the overall construction. It also helps if there are any construction drawings, engineering drawings available, it can translate the right set of an information from those. In also in additional cases, certain scan documentations are needed. So previous permits are given. The permits had certain considerations, but they are not available in any sort of a digitized form. Rather, certain scanned information is available, which these computer vision agents can go ahead and help extract it. Also, the geospatial analysis is something which is very much important. Determine whether project location intersect with any of the protected areas and a boundary. In certain US federal areas, if the particular project is available within the 250 feet boundaries of a historical district or historical properties, there are different consideration and a compliances kick in. So the overall geospatial analysis tells us whether how what is the proximity of the particular project with respect to the historical bodies. Then there is our retrieval augmented generation, or in the general language we call about RAG agents. RAG agents comes into a play when the multiple source of vectorized information has been shown or exposed to the overall agentic solution, and it retrieves the verified regulatory knowledge from the authoritative references, and it helps translate the right set of an information and ask the right cognitive questions if it requires to be uh, build any sort of the intelligence into the systems. Now, let's understand how the components work together. So, there would be always an ingest mechanism which requires these documents, coordinates, imagery, and lot of other information to be exposed. And that information has to be further go into a next level of a process which is called retrieval. So all of the regulatory information and the geospatial references has to be retrieved from the right sort of a sources and has to be given to an analyzed part of the component, which basically use the LLM, computer vision, object character recognition sort of the technologies, and then finally create a report which is a structured compliance summary which has taken the documents into a consideration, right source of information which is retrieved from the reliable sources, and has been analyzed by a cognitive ability utilities which are in this case LLM, computer vision agents, OCR, so on and so forth. Now, the workflow orchestration coordinates all components so they operate as one intelligent system, enhancing existing permitting platforms rather than just replacing them. That means it's just more intelligent ecosystem. Now, what are these integrating multiple data sources would do, or how these multiple data sources can be helpful? So rather just requiring user to search at each platform individually, the AI orchestration layers retrieves the relevant information automatically from the sources, which are like mapping and terrain. So if you would like to capture that information, there are Google Street Views which are available, which can be one sort of a reference information in order to analyze, in order to view the entire property of the construction. There are GIS boundaries which can be leveraged in order to address certain distance related parameter or the compliances. Then the LiDAR uh, elevation datasets, which helps identify the impact uh, to the overall construction. And then there are USGS topographic data available, which basically further fed it to state or national websites from where this information can be captured in order to understand the overall mapping and the terrain data. And then there are regulatory databases available, such as National Park Service data. Any sort of a changes are happening, these park services in databases are collecting the information with respect to the environmental aspects of the physical locality of the areas. The park service databases are important. There are EPA sources, FCC telecommunication data, Federal Communication Commission's telecommunication data in the US is very important. Uh, Infrastructure records are always available with them. So that could be one of the sources which can be integrated in order to do the analysis for building the right compliance permitting documentation letters. And then there are project documentations available. For example, engineering reports, construction drawing, any historical documentation, permit applications which have been submitted in the past and has gone through a certain type of a scrutiny, and the feedbacks have been captured. They are very important when for any next project or a new project these permitting applications are getting prepared. So in the summary, there are varied data sources and there is no one method in order to go ahead and collect this information. That's where in the traditional process the human comes into a play, and that can be easily solved by using the right AI utilities and the orchestration layers. Now let's talk about a little bit intelligent document interpretation. Permitting projects include large collection of engineering documentation. For example, if there are any telecom macro sites are getting constructed, Every single information which is available in the engineering drawing, from antennas to radios to the height of the antenna, their ground disturbance, ground elevations, overall structure height, lot of these things comes into a play. uh, Environmental reports and specification. AI helps us extract key details automatically. It can identify the project coordinates, construction methods from the documents. Any excavation, digging has to be done in order to do uh, the entire project completion. Any utility routes which are available, or any sort of a proposed equipment, what kind of a radios, what kind of an antenna, as I mentioned, uh, can be extracted from the relevant documentation. And the overall scope of a project. Scope could be a new building of the project, or it could be the modification into the existing project. The reviewers receive organized summaries linked directly to the original documents and still preserve the transparencies while executing these reviews. The interpretation, if it is attached to the references, it helps whenever the human in the loop coming up in order to review and approve this. Now let's understand a little bit about the retrieval augmented reasoning. The biggest concern with the AI in the regulated environment is the factual accuracy. Retrieval augmented generation addresses this by requiring the system to consult the authoritative references before generating responses. What does that mean? Like, there are certain compliances which has been uh, given by national historic prevention offices or state historic prevention officers, and those compliances has a rule mentioned while creating this permitting document. If the references of those particular documentation, their clauses, rules is given along with the solution, then it becomes much more reliable sources and the reviewer can make a better decisions. So it's grounded in terms like the official guidance. Responses cite the verified regulatory documentation and not learned based upon just the assumptions and the previous knowledge. Also, as I mentioned, it's verifiable by the reviewer. Every supporting reference can be traced and confirmed. It is audit ready as the evidence remains connected to the original sources throughout the workflow. Anytime, if any of the final output would require to be audited, what is the origin of the information, it can always be traced back to the original documentation part of the flow. And it's easily updated. Regulatory changes are incorporated by updating the reference library. Let's understand. If the source of the information is consistently getting updated, the RAG agents can consistently learn and they can consistently update the reference libraries. And anytime the further changes happens, those tracing can also be updated. So AI can give all of this referential verification information in a by avoiding lot of those manual reference update activities which are currently being done by regulatory agents. While all of this work is being done by the agents, human oversight remains essential. There is a term which is called human in a loop. In this particular process, when we are building such high regarded documentations and permits, a human in a loop oversight can basically help the decision making easy. AI significantly improves the efficiencies, but the regulatory decisions must always remain under the expert supervision. Any sensitive environmental conditions, uh, culturally significant resources, construction methods, incomplete information, they require some sort of a professional judgment. And escalation workflows ensure complex projects expert review before approvals are finalized. So, human in a loop solves the problem of authority, accountability, also improves the reliability on the outputs which are getting generated by a highly efficient system. Let's understand what AI automates and what human decide. All of the hard-working activities where the majority of a human efforts are being spent, they can be automated by AI. For example, information gathering from multiple sources, be it image, be it document libraries, be it reference guides, be it image, and all that. Also, the summarization and the extraction of the right information, evidence package preparation, and the routine compliance check. For example, if the things are changing on the federal guidelines on the routine basis, the routine compliance checks helps keeping the rules updated all the time and allows AI to always capture the right information. But what is reserved for the specialist is the final permitting determination. AI can generate the permit document, and a human can go ahead and evaluate and read and determine whether it is correct or what is the accuracy of the correction. Complex or sensitive project reviews remains with the human, agency consultation decisions, and the accountability for approvals. This balance between the automation and a human expertise maintains public trust while improving the productivity. Let's see the practical workflow. In the telecom industry, whenever the constructions are happening and the construction are happening in the historical district, telecommunication provider always proposes installing either a new equipment within the existing right of way near a historical district, or they are modifying the existing project. What is received by the system is the engineering drawings, coordinates, historical documentation about the projects have done in the past, and lot of project scoping related information. Also, once that information is received, it can be analyzed for the geospatial bounds, any sort of photos, and the regulatory information which is available from the reference guides. This information can be evaluated to identify the exclusion and the impact zones, and then the right sort of a compliance report can be drafted with the expertise of the AI implementations, and it can be reviewed with the expert assessment if flagged. So, overall workflow, which is using a practical aspect of the AI, is evaluated thoroughly and drafted with the right consideration and leverage the right references from the right source of the information. If no unusual conditions are detected, reviewer complete the assessment efficiently and complex cases are automatically flagged for the expert evaluation. Four analysis, sys and one instant. The orchestration platform runs every review in parallel, cutting assessment time from days to minutes. In typical telecom processes, any sort of the permit letter which is generated by the internal regulatory organization, due to higher complexity of data collection, it has an SLAs for 15 to 20 days. By utilizing the right AI tool, these SLAs can be shortened significantly, maybe from days to hours, And also, the accuracy of the data collection can be improved significantly at a very less effort. The orchestration platform runs every review in parallel, cutting assessment time from days to minute, means a geospatial analysis intersects project coordinates against the protected and restricted boundary layers. The vision analysis parses site photos and engineering drawing for visual compliance signals. Document AI leverage the extracting critical technical specification and flags ambiguities, and regulatory RAGs retrieves and applies the exact guidance which are relevant to each project's context. Now, where do we see the benefit of this implementation? There are certain POCs have been done. Also, the actual implementation has been done in the US geography for some of these implementation when it comes to the compliance letter to be produced to National Environment Policy Act and some of the other federal agencies. But the benefit across the multiple industries can be observed uh, when the scale of this particular solution is done, and it can go beyond the historical district permitting. For example, infrastructure and transformation, accelerate project planning and organize environmental assessments, utilities and telecom, streamline network expansion, reviews, improve documentation consistency, and the government and the defense area, improve transparency and documentation quality and across agency coordination. Reusable capabilities at a scale. The combination of an AI and a geospatial intelligence, document understanding, and regulatory reasoning creates reusable capabilities that extend beyond any single permitting workflow. Organizations adopting these technologies gain improved efficiencies while maintaining traceable compliance processes, delivering measurable values to communities, agencies, and project stakeholders. The data which is collected, part of this analysis, has even a higher reusability. Any regulatory reasoning which is done by the RAG and the citation agents, they can be further utilized for any different type of a compliance. The workflow orchestration can be re-leveraged to re-orchestrate all of the agents to do a different type of a permitting. Document and understanding, extraction, summarization capabilities, web crawlers, which are being built in order to get this information. They can be re-leveraged in order to get the information for any sort of the compliance or projects. Geospatial intelligence built through agent. It can identify layers of information and that can be leveraged for any sort of the analysis purposes and further make that data into a utilization. What's coming next? Now, so far we have seen that how the AI agents can help gather the information and create the right permitting output, how they can be binded into a workflow and orchestration, how the across industry scale is possible into this. But what's coming next is quite exciting. There are possibilities of predictive compliance. Anywhere the data which has been put into a monitoring or the data has been collected on a periodic basis, by using that data, predictive compliance can be put into a work and it can anticipate any sort of an issues even before they arise. Satellites are consistently collecting the data, and automated monitoring of a site conditions can help AI to do a better judgment of the information when they read the periphery territory related information. There could be a conversation planning agents deployed. For example, we create certain agents for national environment policy, we create certain agents or AI agent solutions for uh, communication commissions or aviation authorities, they have a heavy documentation and a guidelines uh, guide the entire process. The conversation planning agents can help human in a loop to understand better from where the compliance obligations comes into a play and how it has been used in the deployed solution in order to generate the permitting documentation. Also, a cross agency collaboration is one of the great activity where the AI agents can help the cross agency obligations and the compliance to a specific agency related documentation, uh, and can clarify to the regulatory agents very well. Multimodal AI, the unified future. Advances in the multimodal AI will allow system to interpret not only text, maps, engineering drawing, construction drawings, photographs, videos, 3D models within a single unified workflows. Improved reasoning capability will support more sophisticated evidences synthesis, maintaining clear audit trails. It also can go ahead and make this entire data into a play, can be integrated into certain future coming technologies like building a digital twin of the projects by leveraging this information, and try to run certain POCs before even the project is getting executed. So the future is not fully autonomous decision making. It is an intelligent collaboration of the information between the AI systems, and the experienced professionals makes the right decisions by leveraging the capabilities of these technologies. Now, what is the play of the governance? A lot of information gathering is happening with respect to this AI data, AI agents, but the risk is something which requires to be evaluated well, and governance is something which has to be thought through thoroughly. Expanding AI capabilities demand a robust governance. Organization that get this right will always lead. Those that don't will face liability. Three pillars are non-negotiable when it comes to the governance: transparent models, evident traceability, and human accountability. Surface the reasoning behind every recommendation so professionals can interrogate and challenge and trust the output. Trace every conclusion back to its source, verified references and data governance, and a clear audit trail. And keep qualified specialists in the decision seat, which AI informs, but the expert owns the outcome. So, transparent models, evidence traceability, and human accountability is the core values of the governance. Right audit tracking is happening, the right challenge and negotiations are happening, and the human accountability remains in the loop, it remains risk free. A blueprint for responsible AI in the compliance: by integrating the language models, a computer vision utility, certain geospatial analysis, retrieval augmented reasoning, workflow orchestration, they can transform the entire way how the federal permitting is executed right now. It can be more faster, less labor intensive, more consistent, and highly traceable from where it has been driven, and the workflows without replacing the expert who matter the most. So, efficiencies by reducing repetitive manual work, accuracy as every decision in authoritative data is grounded, and accountability, maintain human oversight and full auditability across the ecosystem. And this is being done. This can be done much more efficiently, and the future of AI driven compliance permitting is going to be superiorly bright. Thank you so much. Here we end the session. Um, I would definitely welcome any sort of the feedbacks or any discussions which requires.